Let's break down atropine for myopia control in a way that actually makes sense clinically. Myopia progression is driven primarily by axial elongation, and low-dose atropine is one of our most evidence-backed tools to slow it. Low-dose atropine works through more than just cycloplegia. It modulates muscarinic receptors in the retina and sclera, reduces scleral remodeling, and increases choroidal thickness. Together, these effects help slow axial elongation and myopia progression. Atom-1 was the landmark trial using 1% atropine, and it showed a dramatic reduction in myopia progression compared to placebo. But the catch was obvious: significant cycloplegia, photophobia, and poor tolerance. Atom-1 proved atropine works, but also pushed us to search for lower, more tolerable concentrations. So the next step was to lower doses: 0.5%, 0.1%, and 0.01%. All of them slowed myopia, but the higher concentrations still caused noticeable pupil dilatation, near blur, and showed a stronger rebound when treatment was stopped. The dose that stood out was 0.01%. It offered meaningful control with minimal effect on accommodation and pupil size, making it far easier for children to use long-term. This is what shifted clinical practice toward low-dose atropine, laying the foundation for the concentrations we rely on today. Once low-dose atropine became the focus, the next question was, which concentration works best within the safer range? That's where the LAMP trial helped clarify things. It compared 0.05%, 0.025%, and 0.01%, all of them tolerable for long-term use, and found a clear dose response. 0.05% produced the greatest reduction in spherical equivalent progression and axial elongation, followed by 0.025% and then 0.01%. This made 0.05% one of the most commonly recommended starting concentrations, especially in children who are progressing quickly. But even with low-dose atropine, side effects still depend on the concentration. Higher doses tend to cause more pupil dilatation and a little more near blur, while the lower doses are usually very well tolerated for everyday use. Another point to remember is rebound, the faster return of progression after stopping treatment, which tends to be more noticeable with higher concentrations. So whichever dose you choose, it's important to plan follow-up and tapering carefully. And once treatment begins, the key is regular monitoring. At baseline, document cycloplegic refraction, axial length, and any risk factors like early onset or fast previous progression. Follow-up is typically every 6 months, checking both spherical equivalent and axial length to see how the child is responding. At around the 1-year mark, if progression is still significant, this is when you can adjust the concentration or add another modality. If the child stays stable for a longer period, usually a couple of years, then you can start thinking about when and how to taper, always keeping rebound in mind. At the end of the day, all the major trials point towards the same practical framework. The effective range sits between 0.01% and 0.05%, and the choice depends on how fast the child is progressing and how well they tolerate the drops. No matter which concentration you start with, axial length remains your most reliable marker to track. And throughout treatment, just remember that stopping abruptly can trigger rebound, so it's always better to taper thoughtfully. So that's a quick clinically useful overview of how atropine fits into myopia control, from high-dose origins to the low-dose strategies we use today. For more resident-level ophthalmology breakdowns like this, follow I Will Win.